Hey there, my name is Alex, I am the Silvermont, and this is my review for Game of Thrones Season 7. Now, originally I was going to review every episode, but it quickly became apparent that was a stupid plan because virtually nothing happened this season. It was almost entirely set up. But let's give you the quick rundown in case you don't want to watch the whole video. Over the years, as they've run out of book material, the show has come to rely more and more on cool or shocking moments and insists on throwing them in, even when they often make no sense. The show's production values are, by and large, great. The music, the visuals, they are close to a movie standard. Most of the actors are great. The special effects are handled pretty damn well. But the writing? Game of Thrones has a rather bizarre problem in that the writers are also the producers of the show. They are the word of God at this point. What they say goes, and as the years have gone by, they have become increasingly smug and avoid any criticism by just blaming it on trolls or people who don't get it, even going so far as to say, we don't look at any online comments because they're too mean. And whilst there are a lot of mean and stupid comments on the internet, that doesn't mean you can just avoid all criticism and hide away in your own little bubble. But now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's run down on a few noteworthy moments of the season. Starting with episode 3, because I've already made a whole review for episode 1 and episode 2, basically nothing happened. But episode 3, Davos doesn't even mention that Tyrion is by and large responsible for his son's death. Did he not know? Well, this was actually brought up later. It was brought up later in the season, which was a nice touch, but it wasn't a source of any drama, which I found rather bizarre. See, the show loves generating drama wherever it can, and that is not necessarily a bad thing. Drama and conflict can bring tension into a show, and throughout the season, though, we've had a laughably written conflict between Arya and Sansa. But when it comes to the point that Tyrion is responsible for the death of Mathos, the only son Davos has in the show, he's just like, that's war, I guess. Now, I'm not a father, so maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but if I knew somebody was responsible for the death of a close friend or family member, no matter how much I knew the context of the situation, I would still harbour resentment towards them. But apparently Davos isn't allowed that in the show because he's been reduced to Jon Snow's minion at this point. He's now a non-character, which is a shame because the actor is great and I love his portrayal of Davos. Then we have the fact that the Iron Bank is investing in the slave trade in the show. Now, I'm not the lore master of A Song in Ice and Fire, but let me give you the super quick rundown on Braavos, the city where the Iron Bank is situated. Long ago, the arsehole Valyrians kept loads of slaves working in horrible, back-breaking conditions in mines that are possibly volcanic. You know in Minecraft where you smack through a wall and then lava comes out? That's basically what they were doing. This is where the Faceless Men started too, to give the slaves succor. And then the slaves escaped and founded the free city of Braavos. And gee, guess what? A city of escaped slaves weirdly don't like slavery. Braavos then kicked the shit out of Pentos until they were forced to abolish slavery. Now granted, they basically kept slaves in Pentos, but it's technically no longer allowed. They get around it with loopholes. We don't know exactly what they think of Daenerys. After all, they probably have a long history with the Targaryens, but we know for certain that the Iron Bank does not endorse slavery. It's the opposite. They do not want slavery to be a thing. And yes, you can consider, well, who cares? Maybe the city is different in this show, but then, if the main purpose of that scene was to get the Iron Bank to work with Cersei, which it was, instead of, duh, she's in your base taking your slaves, why didn't they say, gee, remember how the Dragon Lords used to enslave you until your people escaped and founded a city away from them? And now there's a new Dragon Queen who is bent on conquering Westeros? Do you think she's gonna repay our debts? Does that not make a multitude more sense? Well, yes, it does. But again, they didn't think about that. They just went for the most obvious solution, which was to talk about slavery, even though it makes no sense. I only really have two things to say about episode 4. First up, Arya's power level is stupidly high. Yes, I know she was doing elite ninja training or whatever, but isn't this a series that has been mostly grounded in reality? We don't have, like, little anime characters teleporting behind each other. That's basically what she is now. She's an unstoppable little ninja girl because the writers probably think that's super epic and badass. It's even more stupid because show Brayeen is even more powerful than book Brayeen. And book Brayeen is already a good fighter. In the show, they keep making a point that she's essentially God mode, and now Arya is elite God mode or something. It's not a big deal, but the whole purpose of the scene is just look how strong Arya is. Like, it doesn't serve any real purpose. You can argue that it is to demonstrate to Sansa that Arya is dangerous now, but there are other ways to do that. It was effectively just there to be a badass moment. Pointless pandering. A Song of Ice and Fire has always been a series to include strong female characters, but the writers of this show have made the classic Hollywood mistake of thinking strong female character literally means a female character who is physically stronger than surrounding males. Oh, she's a girl, but she can beat up dudes. That is clearly the only definition by which a woman can be measured is by her comparison to men. Yeah, that's not really how it works, but hey, you do what you gotta do, I guess. The other point from this episode was that retarded Dothraki going, haha, your people can't fight. I'm guessing he wasn't there when Jorah chunked that Blood Rider in Season 1, and he obviously wasn't there when 1 trillion Dothraki got wasted by 1.5 Unsullied. But he was there when his entire amazing warrior race were conquered by a 5-foot-tall girl who knocked over a torch. So, yeah. And he was there when the rear guard of an army were defeated by a dragon. I hope they bring this character back next season and he tells, say, the Night's King that he doesn't know how to fight, and then the Night's King disembowels him or ice spears him. Okay, so on to episode 5. Why did Davos seek out Gendry, whatever his name is? As in, what possible function did it serve? Did he need a fighter? Did he need a smith? He worked hard to get him out of danger, and now he's brought him back. Why? They never really explain that. He just says, I'm going to look for someone. Oh look, here's Gendry. Was it just fan service? It's nice to see the character again, but they had no real reason to bring him back. Couldn't they have found a better way? Like, perhaps Cersei discovers that he's in the city and he needs a way to escape, and by happenstance Davos and Tyrion are there at the same time? No, he's just there because. This stinks to me of fan service that is being set up for something in the next season. Gendry's going to be, I don't know, legitimized as a lord or a king. He's going to marry Sansa, he's going to marry Arya, or he's going to die in a heroic sacrifice. They're setting something up, and I don't like how blatant they're being about it. You can argue the same thing happened last season with the Hound, Beric, and Thoros, but I thought that was a lot more subtle. They didn't give us some weird reason to go back to the Hound. They just went, oh, remember Sandor Clegane? Well, here he is. He's mostly recovered from his wounds when Brayeen kicked him down a mountain. And it made sense for the Brotherhood to be nearby because, well, they were in the Riverlands, and that's just where he happened to be. They should have done something similar with Gendry, not just had Davos go, remember that kid who I saved a few years ago? I think I'm going to go and find him now because he was so useful back then. No, it just didn't make sense. Sorry about that. Episode 6. Great production values, only the writing let it down, and there's a lot to nitpick. Why didn't the Night's King shoot the stationary target in front of him? Why did he pick the flying one? They were both burning the undead. They were both burning the whites. Maybe the flying target was more dangerous? Why did he wait an entire day when they were stuck on an island? When he clearly is pretty amazing, he could have picked them all off whilst they were standing on that island. Style points? Did he know Dany was coming? Did he know he would be able to get a dragon? Why did Benjen come back to life just to immediately die? Well, what? Not come back to life. Why did he immediately show up in the show just to die again? Couldn't he have just gotten on the horse? Now, horses are pretty big, and generally speaking, I think 2 people could fit on a horse. It might not be ideal, but I don't think the horse is going to really die. It's not like John or Ben are really huge guys. See, this was a I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain moment of bullshit. Overall though, it was a good episode, I'd say. The show is often at its best when the actors just get to act without dealing with retarded writing. They've completely thrown any sense of scale out the window at this point. I guess you could bring up the point in season 1 where they went from Winterfell to King's Landing in 1 episode, but still, there wasn't any tension or drama there. They were literally just travelling down the King's Road. There was no reason for it to take a long time. But here, things should be taking longer than they are. I mean, what the hell is wrong with Westeros in the show? People just get wherever they need to be immediately. It took Arya, what, 2-3 seasons to get from King's Landing to the Vale? And then people are moving 2 or 3 times that distance in a single episode? And they aren't even giving us anything as to imply a passage of time. Things just seem to be happening immediately. Then we have the season finale. Let's start with the diplomacy. Euron actually running away would have been too interesting, I suppose. So, what was their plan? Speaking of which, Game of Thrones now loves having planning happening off-screen, having logical things happening off-screen. Remember when Tywin was planning with Lord Walder? They didn't show the letter, they didn't show them face to face, but they implied stuff that was happening there, and a lot of other times they just show what is happening. But now everything happens off-screen in the show, so they can reference it later without it actually happening. That's shitty writing. It means you can pull anything out your ass to explain anything else. But yes, what was their plan exactly? Okay, Euron, we're gonna meet with them, and if they happen to show something spooky, let's pretend that you get scared and run away. It's not a huge issue, but it's a pretty bizarre plan. Could have been handled much better. Cersei and Tyrion, I don't understand the point of it. Was it written purely for fan service to give them a moment? Yes, it was. Is it remotely believable that Cersei is a cold bitch on the surface, but deep down she loves Tyrion? No, not really, because they've made a point in the show of making Cersei even more 2D and evil than she is in the books. She recently detonated an entire church full of people and then acted like a sociopath when her son killed himself. This is a great definition of plot armor. The Mountain couldn't kill Tyrion because his plot armor was too powerful. Remember Euron's Valyrian steel armor in the books? Well, Tyrion has that in the show, only it's invisible. And no, it wasn't an interesting parallel later on with Jaime, because Cersei has never given any parallels between the two ever before. She loves Jaime because Jaime is a reflection of herself. He is as close as she can get to doing herself. Whenever Jaime strays from a path that aligns with hers, she hates him, simple as that, and she has always hated Tyrion. The fact that she didn't kill him the moment she had a chance to, I don't buy it. Anyway, then we have the Arya and Sansa stuff. I don't know where to begin, frankly. The whole season played up this forced drama between them, even though it made no sense. Even at the end of it, what the hell are we supposed to take away from this? Was Sansa actually afraid of Arya? If so, why did they decide to team up on Littlefinger? When did they decide it? Off camera? Again, lazy and bad writing that exists to give us an epic, shocking moment when she accuses Littlefinger. If she was playing a game the whole time, guess what? It's the exact same thing. They resolved it off camera in the most lazy way possible. Beyond that, are we really supposed to believe that Littlefinger didn't have guards that he paid to keep him safe, when that's exactly what he is known for? Are we supposed to believe that nobody's going to question the fact that they just executed who is essentially the Lord of the Vale in cold blood, without a trial, on the word of a prophet who has no hard evidence other than his magic vision? Isn't that breaking guest right? Something the North holds sacred and makes a huge deal over? Just think about the source of this conflict. Oh, Sansa, you wrote a letter. Yeah, it's not like that can be explained by Sansa going, yeah, they were holding me hostage and basically made me do that. But then Arya's like, oh no, you had a choice, you could have died. Yeah, just like Arya had a choice to pick up a fork and stab Tywin in the throat. But she didn't? I don't know. Either way, the scene feels like it was written to give them a girl power moment and to get rid of Littlefinger because they didn't know what to do with him. You could have achieved the same result in a far more realistic and intelligent manner by just having them work out on camera that Littlefinger is trying to play them against each other, and then exiling him from Winterfell, sent him back to the Vale, sent him to the Wall. It's either a death sentence or he's gone from the show, and you don't break guest right, and you don't have to have a stupid, look how tough our characters are moment. No, the show had to give us the poetic justice of Arya avenging her father, because Arya is now just a tool to make basic viewers go, yeah, this is what I want, and cheer. You know, I watched the behind the scenes video on these episodes, and this is in part why I have developed a mistrust and dislike of the writers and producers. They have no idea how to convey the emotions they want to in a scene. Two great examples from this series. They wanted the scene between Dany and Jon on the boat to be alarming. It's incest after all. Daenerys is Jon's aunt. Look on social media, look on forums, look at what the majority of viewers are thinking. It is not, oh gross, it's oh yeah. And then, back when the Lannister army was being decimated by the dragons, the intent of that scene, from the writers' own mouths, is that they wanted Dany to be seen as an aggressor, not necessarily a bad guy, but an aggressor. You are seeing the brutality of a dragon attack from Jaime's perspective, and yet again, the majority of people were like, yes, burn those white men. Look at that old man and his stupid named son. They are on fire, I am cheering. It's a universal level of cognitive dissonance. Anyway, the concept behind the intercutting between Dany and Jon and the flashbacks with Rhaegar and Lyanna, that was a good concept, but poorly executed. You know what they should have done? Gone more the route of the House of the Undying and made it a three-way, no pun intended, scene. Here's what I would have done for the finale. Intercut moments of Rhaegar, who should have been played by the actor of Viserys from Season 1, by the way, playing his harp, talking to Elia, talking to Lyanna, talking to Aerys. You know his line, "His shall be a song of ice and fire." Include that. Rhaegar's scenes would be the narrative. Jon and Dany would represent the fire as they are making love, sex being representative of life and fire. And then also intercut this scene with the breaking of the wall, which obviously represents the ice. Yes, I know what you're probably thinking. Daenerys represents fire, Jon represents ice. That's completely fair as well, but this is a more thematic way of looking at it as opposed to individually. Jon was the blue rose in the wall of ice. And then we end the season with the wall breaking, Rhaegar's chestplate being caved in by Robert's warhammer, and the climax between Jon and Daenerys. It practically writes itself. But again, I guess even something that I can think up in 5 minutes is somehow better than what they came up with. But hey, there you go. As for the actual breaking of the wall, it was a pretty cool scene. But again, there's a lot of nitpicking in regards to that and many other things, but I won't dwell on them as they aren't too important. Like, how is Viserion breathing fire if he has a giant hole in his chest, yada yada. Things like that we can overlook because hey, he's a dragon, he got brought back from the dead. I'm willing to overlook the fact that when he breathes fire, it just should squirt out his sides. But no, overall, I like this final scene, even if they totally ripped off Wrath of the Lich King. There's also a few problems stemming from the Bran stuff in the last few episodes. If Rhaegar annulled his marriage with Elia, wouldn't that effectively mean he disowned his wife and his children, disinheriting them in the process? That would be a really big dick move. Outside of that, Robert's rebellion wasn't built on a lie. Ares murdered Ned's family and he wanted to murder Ned and Robert too, until Jon Arryn was like, no? Okay, so was there anything from this season I liked? There was a lot that I liked. The production values are almost top notch, even if I think the costume design's maybe gone a bit downhill, and it's really not subtle to just outfit Cersei into Ninja Turtle Kingsblood in black. Kingsblood? Kingsguard. Everyone's wearing black. Colours are too bright and not edgy enough or something. Acting's almost always great. I even found myself hating Daenerys a lot less this season. I think Jon had a great influence on her, a sobering influence that makes her a lot less smug and annoying, and more like an actual human being. Tyrion also has that same effect on her. He's like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't just go around burning everyone. That's not the best idea. The romance between Jon and Dany wasn't developed too well, but it was fine. You know, it wasn't like amazing, because let's face it, the show's romances have never been the central focus and they've never been super well developed. So this one was fine. It was consistent. Dany's obnoxious smugness was reduced by a huge degree, and that's a good thing. Theon's acting is almost always on point, and it's a shame he's not had much to do lately. This last episode in particular, I really enjoyed the scene between Theon and Jon. I thought this was a great way to remind us of what Theon was like, because let's face it, Theon has been this way for most of the show. It's easy to forget what a smug little shit he was at the start. Of course, the scene immediately following this was a bit stupid. We didn't need 80 zoom-ins on the Cockless Wander's crotch being pummeled by the guy. They could have just shown him doing it once. He didn't need to do it 1,000 times and then have a really big zoom-in on Theon grinning at him. It kind of reminds me of when Revolver Ocelot poked Big Boss in the eye. That scene was a lot better. I enjoyed the burning of the Lannister troops scene, and consequently the burning of Randall and Dickon. I particularly enjoyed Jon's RPG party beyond the wall, even if parts of it were completely nonsense. I really liked Brienne trying to appeal to the good man she knows Jaime is. Nobody else really knows who Jaime is deep down. Maybe Tyrion, but only really Jaime and Brienne know this, so I really enjoyed that she was trying to appeal to him. I wish that scene had been longer. I wish we hadn't focused on the played out stupid stuff between Cersei and Tyrion and focused on Brienne and Jaime. Her appealing to him to have a sense of decency and of what is right. I like that Jaime has finally broken free from Cersei. And even if it was essentially the writers getting rid of characters they had no idea what to do with, I was greatly amused by Euron's Sand Snake removal, because I hated those characters so much. Everything they represented, the murdering of Doran Martell, the literal murdering of the Dawn plotline. But we'll end in the way we began. The show is now written simply for cool and epic shocking moments. And that should not be what the show is about. The Red Wedding, Eddard's death, these moments were shocking, but they made sense. They had foreshadowing, they set up events, they had consequences. I promise you there will be no consequences to anything shocking that happened this season. Were there consequences to Doran Martell being killed? No. Were there any consequences to, like, half the kingdom's leaders being blown up by Cersei? No. The only thing that might have tiny consequences is the Jon and Dany stuff, and I bet you it's not going to be anything meaningful. It will probably just be, oh, we're related? Oh no, nothing big is going to come out of it. I bet. Maybe I'll be wrong next season, but come back to this video in a year's time and I bet you nothing will come of it. Things just happen because they're cool. Guess we'll see how it all wraps up, but frankly, the best thing to come out of this season was Bobby posting. I'll catch you next year for the final season.